Bom dia, todas e todos. Bom, é com satisfação que a gente dá continuidade, né, a esse evento de 4 dias, dividido em 2 eventos. O primeiro foi o Encontro Nacional da Antecipa, que terminou ontem, e hoje, em sequência, a gente tem... Oh, sorry. Forgot. Well, I started over. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to continue our events of the week. The first one was the national meeting of the Antecipa, and now we start our International Symposium, Heritage Science, the Role of Infrastructures. I'm pleased to welcome our colleagues from Europe and also from other states in Brazil, as well as our colleagues and students from Belo Horizonte as well. I'd like to invite to the table our Deputy Director at the School of Fine Arts, Professor Adolfo Cifuentes, who is here representing the director of the school, Professor Cristiano Bicchio, and he will give us welcome words.
Thank you for being here, and I congratulate all the staff from the Conservation Restoration Department for their great job. All through the year they have had different events and different activities, international activities even. Not long ago we were with those people from Germany on that course on restoration of acrylic painting.
Yes.
And well, that was not even a month ago, was it?
Yes, yes.
So they have an active research life and active schedule of activities all throughout the year. I just wish to share a little bit of my approach in our school's approach on the phenomena we call art, and this is like a ecosystem. It's made up of not only the producers, not only the artists, but all the ecosystem that comes with historians, critics, museums, institutions that take care of the preservation, conservation, the historical structures, the memory structures that make art possible. So I really think it's very important, and we're very proud of having such a strong conservation department in our ecosystem of the school. Within the 6 programs that we have, his conservation restoration is one of the most, like I say, active and very outgoing and entrepreneur how you say spirit, entrepreneurial spirit. Okay, that's about it. Thank you all for being here, and I wish you a very great day of activities and intellectual discussions, and good luck throughout the whole symposium. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adolfo, for your kind words, and we are also very pleased to be part of the community of the School of Fine Arts. We have a quick overview of the symposium, which will be given by our colleague, Willy Gonçalves, who has been working hardly for everything, but everything is going very well. So again, thank you very much for all of the efforts you've done for the organization of this meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Luis, and thank you all for being here and for all the collaboration and for your presence here. I would just give you very quick words about the objects of this symposium. I would just like to contextualize our colleagues from Europe. On the first 2 days, we had the first meeting of our national association that was founded in 2015, Antecipa. that is a multi-professional association intended to unite not only the researchers from universities in the expanded field of heritage science, but also the business, corporation, and professionals that act on the field and the market of preservation in Brazil. And this symposium is intended to explore and to discuss the possibilities of cooperation with European organizations through our partnership with Hyperion. So actually, I will only give a quick overview for today's sessions. Tomorrow, Luca will do it. So today we'll have two main sessions. Now in the morning, we will be talking about landscape of heritage sites on South America and in Europe with Aurélie and Luca talking about the European landscape and research infrastructures. And then Luis and Thais Sanjar talking about the Brazilian landscape and the role of Anticipa in this Brazilian heritage science scenario. After the break, we will have Luca and Professor Carlos Basílio of UFMG talking about exploring best practices in bilateral cooperation. How do we make our collaborations more effective? And after lunch, we will have the other main session of today's program with our colleagues, thank you again, talking about the structure of Hyperion, how it's been working, and talking about the typologies of facilities, talking about Fixed Lab with Mr. Tibor Kuhn, and about Arc Lab and MoLab with Bruno Brunetti. Sorry, I invert the order. And Luca talking about digital facilities. And at the end of the day, we'll make an open discussion with closing remarks by Luca. Thank you.
So I'm pleased to invite to the table to give the words to Aurélie Pakov-Singh from APRE in Italy, and the title of the presentation is, so the session is Horizon 2020, Open to the World, the European Union South America Scientific Cooperation, International Dimension of Research Infrastructures. Welcome. Bienvenue.
Good morning, my name is Aurélie Pakov-Singh, and I'm from APRE, which is the Italian Agency for the Promotion of European Research. And we are a partner in the Hyperion project, and I'm going to talk to you about the Horizon 2020, the program for research and innovation of the European Commission, and the opportunities for collaboration within this program, and also about the role of international research infrastructures. So when we talk about Europe in this context, what do we mean? The European Union is 400 million people, 28 countries for the moment, soon to be 27 after the UK leaves us, and also a single market. It represents 6% of the world's population, 20% of the world expenditure on research, 27% of the world publication, 32% of the high-impact publication, and 32% of patent applications. So that's the European Union. But when we talk about research and innovation, Europe is bigger than Europe, because we also include the associated countries. So that means Turkey, Switzerland, Ukraine, Tunisia, Israel are also part of Europe in this context. The cooperation in research and innovation between the European Union and Latin America and the European Union and Brazil comes under a policy framework. The action plan between the European Union and CELAC dates from 2010, and it's implemented through two main activities: joint initiative on research and innovation, and the creation of the EU CELAC Common Research Area. To implement these two initiatives, 8 working groups were initially set up. 7 of them are thematic ones, plus 1 on instrument. And since last year, there is also a new one on research infrastructures. The focus of this common research area is on the mobility of researchers between the two regions, on research infrastructures, and also on societal challenges. As for Brazil specifically, there is a science and technology agreement that was signed 10 years ago and has been renewed until 2022. Those initiatives on the European side are implemented through Horizon 2020. So what is Horizon 2020? It's the European Union Framework Program for Research and Innovation. It considers investment in research and innovation as a core characteristic of the European strategy for an intelligent, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And it's a single program to cover the whole innovation chain, from the lab to the market. The budget is approximately 8 billion euros, which makes it the largest program for research in the world. And it is running for 7 years, until 2020. At the moment, the European member states are negotiating its successor, which will be called Horizon Europe, and which will start in 2021. It is built into 3 main pillars: excellent science, industrial technologies, and societal challenges. Excellent science comprise several programs: the European Research Council for individual grant to excellent researchers, future and emerging technology, Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions that are for researchers' career, and research infrastructures. Excellent science is researchers driven. So it's the foundation of tomorrow's technologies, job, and well-being. Industrial technology is industry driven. It's meant for strategic investment in key technologies, and it also supports innovative companies. And societal challenges is divided in 6 thematic programs, and it is society driven. It is meant to address concerns of citizens and society and policy objectives, and it encourages multidisciplinary collaborations. One of the features of Horizon 2020 is that it is open to the world. And this means that any project in this program can include international partners. This is the principle of general opening. And in addition to that, there is also targeted opening. So in certain topics in calls for proposals, the inclusion of international partners can be encouraged or even mandatory. And there is also the possibility for coordinated calls, where the European Commission, together with the funding agency from another country in the world, publish call jointly evaluate the proposals, and then fund the projects. How can you get involved? These 3 pillars that I described before publish every 2 years work programs, which are then deployed into calls with fixed deadlines, and each call includes a number of topics. You can personally get involved in collaborative projects on research and innovation actions, coordination and support actions, innovation actions, and also on research and innovation staff exchange on mobility projects. As an individual, you can get involved in a European Research Council project or in Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions in individual fellowships. So participation, unfortunately, doesn't mean automatic funding. So in terms of funding for Brazilian participants or South American participants, you have to check whether there is automatically eligible for funding. This is not the case in Horizon 2020 for emerging economies, such as Brazil. It can be sometimes provided in the work program if it is listed in the call that Brazilian scientists will be funded by the European Commission, then you can get funded directly. It can be provided by a bilateral agreement, or exceptionally, if you can justify in your proposal that your participation is imperative for the success of the project and that you can only participate if you get funded, then on an exceptional basis, the Commission can also directly fund you. If it's not the case, then you can participate but not be funded by the European Commission. As you can imagine, this is quite a big deterrent for participation from Brazilians. So as a result, the European Commission signed administrative arrangements with the CNPq, FINEP, and CONFAP. And under this agreement, the objective is to co-finance the Brazilian participants in the project, to organize twinning of research projects that are funded by the European Commission on the European side and by Brazilian funding agencies on the Brazilian side, and also implement coordinated calls. So these agreements were signed in May this year, and they are already being implemented by CNPq. So the Brazilian researchers who are participating in specific projects can request the financial support from CNPq after an evaluation. And this request for funding should be made within the deadlines of the Horizon 2020 calls. And this is across all thematics, all type of calls of the 3 pillars that I described before. On the state level, the CONFAP has prepared guidelines for the preparation of research proposals in collaboration with the EU Horizon 2020. This is, again, across the 3 pillars. However, each individual state funding agency can adapt the guidelines, so the eligibility criteria, but also the evaluation modalities are different from one state to another. And you can see that this is implemented so far by 8 of the state funding agencies, including here in Minas Gerais. The Brazilian participation in Horizon 2020 is quite impressive if you compare it to the other countries in the region, both in terms of collaborative projects and in terms of mobility under the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. But I think what is even more telling is the success rate of Brazilian teams. The success rate overall in Horizon 2020 is 12%, but the success rate of Brazilian teams is 19%. So this would also be a very good argument if you approach European partners to submit a proposal together. If you have already participated in an FP7 or Horizon 2020 project, you might know this portal. This is the participant portal from the European Commission, where you can find all the information about the calls, and you can also submit your proposal, and you can also manage your project once you are getting funded. Keeping with the tradition of the European Commission, now that everybody knows about the participant portal, the Commission is phasing in a new portal, which is bringing together all the funding and tender opportunities by the European Commission, including Horizon 2020. I would like to point out 2 things also on this portal. One is this work as an expert tab. Being an expert evaluator for the Commission is the best way to get familiar with the program and to be ready to submit your own proposal. and also this help desk tab. Under this tab, you can find the contact details of all the national contact points who are professionals that are here to help you develop your proposals, and there are Brazilian national contact points as well, and you can access their contact details here. There is also specific support here in Brazil. The first one is Your Access, which supports researchers' mobility and career development. There is also the INCOBRA project, which was funded by the European Commission with the objective of fostering the cooperative activities in research and innovation between Europe and Brazil. And the Enrich Brazil is a new initiative. It's a network of research and innovation centers and hubs here in Brazil. And both INCOBRA and Enrich have published guides in Portuguese for the participation of Brazilian researchers in Horizon 2020. I mentioned earlier that one of the three focuses of the CELAC EU cooperation is research infrastructures. And I will give you a few more words about this international dimension of research infrastructure in this context. So why do we need global research infrastructures? Some research facilities, particularly in physics or astronomy, but also in many different fields of science, are so large, complex, or expensive that they require international cooperation to construct them and to run them. Others are naturally global in scope because they respond to global challenges or they require the combined skill, data, and efforts of the world's best scientists. So international research infrastructures are an efficient catalyzer of cooperation between peoples. They provide a tangible, shared objective built on the common scientific values of rationality, transparency, and universality. The international cooperation on research infrastructure comes from the nature and complexity of the societal challenges, which require a global approach for the design and operation of research infrastructure. Global cooperation is the only option when pooling of resources is necessary due to the scale of investment for the construction and operation of research infrastructure. And they can be considered strategic for the European Union, where the EU has an international leadership and can influence standardization at global level, where the EU can take advantage of resources that are not available within the individual member states, or where the EU can develop internal capacity by benefiting from the best practices in the global arena. And global cooperation on research infrastructure can be used as a tool to support or complement the EU external policy and contribute to science diplomacy. So this is the rationale on the European side, but of course it is valid for the Brazilian and Latin American side as well. So facilitating strategic research, international cooperation means fostering cooperation between European research infrastructure and other world-class research infrastructure, strengthening the links between the European research infrastructure and their counterpart, ensuring their interoperability and outreach, and pursuing international agreements on reciprocal use, openness, or co-financing of these research infrastructures. Here are a few examples. The first one on scientific excellence is the ELITES project between Europe and Japan on gravitational waves. With regard to science diplomacy, the use of research infrastructures in this context, the Sesame infrastructure is a very good example. It's research infrastructure in Jordan, which was really used in the science diplomacy. And another example is the BELA program between Europe and Latin America, between the research and education communities. So this is a quote from the senior official meeting on science and technology of the EU CELAC GIRI that I presented before. The parties acknowledge the political and socio-economic importance to promote access to research infrastructure of global interest, such as the BELA project, to improve sharing of data and scientific excellence. In this context, they agreed on the importance of sharing good practices in mapping existing research infrastructures, as well as in road mapping, process, and methodology. So the way forward from this official declaration is first to set up a CELAC network of contact persons from funding agencies and decision makers with responsibilities and expertise on research infrastructure in their respective countries, with the aim of establishing this working group. And the second step is now an analysis of the research infrastructure landscape and the existing roadmaps in CELAC. So the landscaping of national capacity country by country and also thematically to identify the national research infrastructures of regional interest. Then the exchange of view on this road mapping process and methodology will help working towards a CELAC roadmap on research infrastructure. The way forward is also to promote cooperation between the pan-European research infrastructure, such as the one that are on the ESFRI, the European roadmap for research infrastructure, and their counterpart in CELAC. And also to promote access to European research infrastructure using Horizon 2020 with exchange scheme and access. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, Aurélie. Thank you, Aurélie. So we have in sequence, the Luca Pezzati, who is the coordinator of Hyperion Cultural Heritage National Research Council of Italy, and he will be talking about the European landscape and research infrastructures for heritage sites. Then, afterwards, we do the discussion, okay? Sorry.
Good. Like yesterday, bon dia. You saw a bit of European organization in the presentation of Aurélie before. I hope this will work. No? Yes. Just take a bit to connect, but now it's connected. Easier the hard way. I remember I was here almost exactly. What's that? I think I was that. Well, great. If you don't switch the microphone there, I think we will have a problem. Switched off because there's too much noise. Well, I was here 3 years ago, and the situation of the project was, let's say, totally different. Because when I came here, The Hyperion CEH integrating activity was just approved. It has started since 6 months. And frankly, in these 3 years, a lot of good things happened. And I'm trying to tell you exactly what happened to the European research infrastructure on heritage science. I think Aurélie introduced the concept of research infrastructure the European way. Yes, research infrastructure is a concept born with large-scale facilities used by my colleagues, physicists, so synchrotrons. And the major fact was, as Aurélie said, not enough money for doing things in your lab. You need to build a bigger laboratory, so you need more money, you need more people, and so you join countries, join universities, and create large-scale research infrastructures. Once you have the research infrastructure, you open it for the use of the whole scientific community. Later, this concept has been an evolution, and distributed research infrastructures were added to the scene. Initially, only single-site research infrastructures were created. Distributed research infrastructures are not created because we need more resources to build them. Distributed research infrastructure are created to geographically cover larger areas. You don't need to travel to the single-site infrastructure if you want to use it. So they are built on the concept of network, but is a special network inside which all the facilities operate together, and there is a single access point to the services of the research infrastructure. This is, again, with distributed infrastructure, you collect usually the best instruments, the best capacities. It's not just a matter of instruments in distributed infrastructure. It's more important the capacities, or better, joining the instruments with the capacities, which is the key for doing excellent science when distributed infrastructures are in the game. So, distributed infrastructure have the capacity to bring to the users, to the scientists, facilities that are good for their research, and the principle is the research group having the best facilities, they open it for the use to colleagues. Of course, they don't open it throughout the year. The external use of a facility in a distributed infrastructure is, generally speaking, between 5 and 20% of the time of the laboratory, of the facility. The other time is devoted to research, is devoted to, let's say, internal use. This is generally the case. And a bit of terminology: if you are a laboratory having good capacities and services, and you provide these, you are a provider in a research infrastructure. If you are a researcher, a scientist, applying for the use, you are a user. This is a not nice terminology, but is the terminology which is used in Europe for defining these two classes of people. What we have in Europe, we have a forum, strategic forum. We have S3, which is the strategy forum, deciding which research infrastructures are to be considered strategic for Europe. And each 2 years, the list of strategic research infrastructures is updated. Last time this happened, it was in Vienna, exactly 6 weeks ago. We have now the roadmap S3, roadmap for research infrastructures, 2018. It's been just released. And so, how our infrastructure is in the roadmap ESFRI since 2016. Because in the last 3 years, practically speaking, right after I left Brazil in 2015, I started writing the case for submitting the heritage science infrastructure to ESFRI and to enter the official European roadmap for research infrastructures. The concept at that time we adopted was that of pointing to a broader view of our science. We started as an integrating activity for conservation and restoration, so for cultural heritage, let's say, patrimonio culturale. But then we decided that we will be proposing not just the prosecution of this, but something bigger. And with this, the idea that a bigger kind of science could be also defined, which is heritage science. So practically, we started by the proposal of an infrastructure pointing to a scientific domain that, frankly, it was not there 3 years ago. And now the discussion is gone on and on. But when we proposed heritage science, it was a pretty new concept developed in UK by some good people. I remember that the document for heritage science was released by the House of Lords in 2006. Yes. So it was a concept they were thinking, but it didn't left the island. And frankly, around the world, people was speaking of conservation science. When I participated to the Forum of ICROM in Rome, it was the forum, International Forum on Conservation Science. And there I started saying, this forum is wrong right from the title. Because conservation science is not something new, it's not something that can bring us in the future. And so the idea was to submit heritage science with the concept of trying to make it as inclusive as possible. For those of you here 2 days ago, I told you which is our concept. The concept is co-creating knowledge. So no more disciplinary barrier in this field. We need to do science together. This is very difficult, but frankly, this idea passed. And we entered the official ESFRI roadmap of the European Commission in 2016 in Amsterdam. And we are there since 2 years. We have, of course, been confirmed in the current update of the roadmap. How this was possible? This was possible starting, at least in European terms, from zero. And the man who made this possible is here with us, luckily, because the first to submit a proposal to the European Commission about an infrastructure for cultural heritage, conservation and restoration has been Bruno Brunetti. And the idea of a mobile laboratory that is a collection of instruments as an European research infrastructure has been brought on the scene by UARTEC while Framework Program 6 was running. So almost 15 or more than 15 years ago. And so all this work together of several prominent institutions in Europe, which started with a small group, but then, as you see, continuously increased the number of institutions and countries involved through a line of integrating activity projects like Hyperion CH. In this project, the European Commission is paying for the institution to work like a research infrastructure, so to provide access, to do networking together, to do advanced training together. Everything is paid by Brussels. This is the concept of integrating activity. And we had 3, UARTEC, Charisma, Hyperion CH, which is about to finish, and we are about to submit the 4th, which will probably be the last one, Hyperion HS, in March. In Hyperion CH, the number of countries increased to 13 and the number of members to 24. And when we submitted it, several of you supported this idea with also formal letters. And that is when we submitted all these formal letters of support coming from outside Europe to the Commission, and someone in the Commission told us, look, but you have the potential to be a global research infrastructure. And that is why we applied also to the group of senior officials, which is the group of the advisors of the ministries of science in the G13. Oh, I don't remember now the number of G7 plus 5, G8 plus 5. Oh, well, the important fact is Brazil is one of this group. And so these advisors, called the group of senior officials, they are trying to keep, like, let's say, a world roadmap of global research infrastructures. IRIS, what we created out of Hyperion CH, is in this world roadmap since 2014, and is still seen potentially as a global research infrastructure. And this is explaining why we are investing in international cooperation so much, because that is part of our mission. Well, the project Hyperion is about to finish. We have a very strong group in Europe, and we have the participation of the Getty Conservation Institute from the United States. It was a nice way to spend 8 million euro, a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of access provided. And one of the missions of Hyperion CH was, and this slide I think was here 3 years ago, the mission was to contribute to the establishment of IRIS. And so that mission is accomplished, because IRIS is now on the way to be established. The kind of activities of Hyperion will be, I think, will be presented in the remaining presentation of today, because will be presented the access platforms, some joint research, and actually we are doing networking because networking is just this kind of operation, is organizing conferences, is organizing international events. And so in Hyperion CH, I can anticipate, we are operating 3 access platforms, which makes us a rather complex European research infrastructure, because usually the kind of access provided are less than 3, and in the next infrastructure you will see before. This will be presented by speakers after, and we did, but I think also this slide dates back to 3 years ago, because these are the topic of the joint research activities that now are going towards their end. We had very interesting activities that have been quite successful. One of these, which started like a challenge, it is the exploring the safe boundaries of interaction of ion beams and light with artworks. This has been the subject of a structured cooperation which the project has with the International Atomic Agency. And we did a couple of events together because they are really interested in the safe use of nuclear techniques. But this project is one of the first projects who officially cared about investigating how non-invasive are the non-invasive techniques, because we simply define, okay, they are non-invasive. Then you fire a laser focus on a paper, and even if you have 0.5 milliwatt, if the focus is thin enough, you damage the object, but in principle it's non-invasive. So the infrastructure is taking care about this. We are asking ourselves, are we sure that what we use, we claim to be non-invasive, it is in the long run? Of course, you can imagine it's very difficult research, this, because it's not that easy to investigate. And also the results of this research are dangerous, because you cannot write more than recommendation, because if you write guidelines, you can be sued by someone burning a piece of art after your instructions were followed. So it's even difficult to put the results in writing, because you are risking here. Anyway, we also did a lot of digital research, because next year's will be digital. And this is an example of networking activity. The last one is the more important, because if you don't find money, you die. So sustainability as a joint cooperation effort is for future. And then, of course, training, impact, international cooperation, and exchanging knowledge within the network. The network is very big, as you will see in the iris, because once we started this project, we submitted for the roadmap. We won a place in the roadmap, the only research infrastructures around for heritage science or for cultural heritage in general. Iris is still the one research infrastructure in the roadmap. By the way, the number of research infrastructures in the European roadmap under all domains is close to 50. So there's not 5,000. So the official S3 infrastructures in Europe are about 50. So it's important to be there. It's a very visible position, and it's the first time heritage science got this visibility in all the European bureaucracy since the start, being a strategic research infrastructure. This is what we brought to the field in Europe. Let's say political relevance is measured at advancement that we brought with this project. And that is, again, thanks to Bruno. We spent 15 years organizing this group in Europe. Well, now we are pointing to a monster involving 25 countries and probably more than 100 scientific facilities in the distributed network, which you can imagine is not that easy to coordinate and to agree to the basic operation principles, and that is what we are doing in the preparatory phase. But now we have a core mission that is simpler than before. We want to provide access to cutting-edge scientific services and instruments for cross-disciplinary. So we don't want the lone researcher, the solitary man, the physicist alone, the art historian alone. That is not the way of approaching the research infrastructure. We prefer multidisciplinary group with conservation or scientific problems. We already said this, and probably in the final scientific vision we will write this, that we will foster the participation to this kind of research to groups, because actually on our side we have groups. Providers in our side, most of providers are multidisciplinary groups. And so we can create multidisciplinarity at work, practically speaking, with each of the projects of access to the research infrastructure. The second point in the mission is to provide this at global level. Of course, we will take years to come to that point. The scientific reviewer told it's a wonderful project. It will take 20 to 40 years to implement. Okay, the good news, the first 3 passed. So it's now 17 to 37 to implement. Anyway, I will be retired. To increase the complication and to comply with modern life, we added a 4th platform of access, which I will tell you about later, which is called DigiLab, the platform for virtual access to data and tools. So now we have one of the most complex offer of services around infrastructures in Europe, because we will offer services on 4 platforms of totally different kind of accesses. We like challenges, you may have noticed. Apart from providing access, we also will need to do a lot of activities to keep the infrastructure alive. And this is, unfortunately, a non-exhaustive list. This is why we are now discussing the entity of the core group. The central activities will be held in the central hub of the infrastructure by a group of people, which we are dimensioning because we need to ask to the participant the money for paying this group in a stable future environment. And you see the complexity of handling the offer of access, because even if the infrastructure is distributed, the access to the infrastructure 100 facilities maybe in the future, needs to be handled centrally. So peer review processes, user support, everything has been placed to the central hub. Biggest challenges. From a scientific point of view, the biggest challenge is probably to have all these groups around the world, Europe first and then the world, to agree on common approaches. So analytic approaches, diagnostic approaches, protocols, ways of doing things, ways of solving the scientific problem. This is particularly important in metrology, and the infrastructure is providing a lot of metrology, because you need to produce consistent data if you want to use that data across the world. So we are all focused on creating a culture of exchanging of digital data, and this is implying that we will be able to exchange our data sets. But you know that to exchange a data set, you need to have a good system of metadating. And if you don't have good protocols, you cannot translate protocols in metadates if the protocols are bad or are different. You cannot have diverse systems of metadata in the same data set, otherwise the exchange of data will be difficult, not fluid, not. And so you see, I think this is the biggest challenge, because we are thinking of institutions from 25 different countries, speaking 26, maybe 30 different languages. And even this is a problem in semantics, ontologies, everything. Well, the other problem is to build the digital system and to open the data of heritage. You know, museums are not particularly keen in opening data about heritage, not even archaeologists, but as this is the future, we need to point there. About the monster, we expect this to be the size. So 60 to 100 access providers in steady state, implying the number of people providing services in that range, up to 1,000 researchers providing. Probably the same size on the user side, 1,000 users. And then many more users on the virtual platform, but that is a minor problem because you need just bandwidth to handle that. And this is the list of countries. We started less than 2 years ago. We started the preparatory phase with 16 countries involved. It is this list. And in 1 year and a half, we have this number of observers. People sending observers to the meetings. And of course, Brazil is included. These observers may be of two different kinds: scientific observers, governmental observers, of both. For instance, ICROM, we can say, is sending governmental observer because they are committed. And by the way, ICROM is not a country. ICROM is an intergovernmental organization, but it is part of the game, let's say. Romania is sending both, for instance, starting from 1 year ago, 0, and now they are involved with this kind of support. I'm currently liaising with Switzerland and with Norway. And then we still have a good list of strong scientific contacts to be translated in actual observation and then maybe participation. What is the point of observing and participating from outside Europe? We are creating the European consortium. We don't want the European consortium to be the global infrastructure. It will stay just as the European consortium. In our view, the European consortium is the player in the global infrastructure. So if we want to create a cooperation, we need first to have a legal person, a structure. And so we are building that in Europe. And IRIS will maybe the Europe partner of a bigger international consortium that we are trying to define. It's not easy. I say this in Vienna, the International Conference of Research Infrastructure. How will you manage the global governance was the question. And the answer is, honestly, I don't know. One solution could be to convince an intergovernmental organization already existing to create a special activity for this infrastructure, so that there's no need to create another international legal person, which is a process which is very complex and time-consuming. So who could be candidate to create this, let's say, spin-off? Two obvious candidates, considering that we are working on heritage science, are ICROM and UNESCO. We will see. It's just an idea for the moment. What I don't want to do, I don't want IRIS to include what is outside Europe. IRIS needs to go with the European rules. So maybe in a first stage we will start with formal bilateral agreements with research infrastructure outside Europe. Then at a later stage we will see. Anyway, we now have a formal statement of cooperation with ICROM. It has been signed in Warsaw a few weeks ago in October. And the points are four. The formal point of cooperation which we defined: advocacy at global level, promote training, transdisciplinary training, open access to data, and impact. These are the four chapters of the first official cooperation which we are about to start with ICROM, between ICROM and IRIS. These are very nice results. As we said in Vienna, ICROM signed an agreement with nobody because they have the status of an intergovernmental organization, and we just simple European project going to finish in 1 year. Oh, well, but the statement is there. We are thinking to open the central hub of the whole European side, IRIS, ERIC, European Research Infrastructure Consortium, in Florence, in a nice place, thanks to a very nice sponsorship of a Florentine bank. So we are working to make this possible in 2021, probably. Our model is not difficult to manage. In principle, it will be easy to manage also at international level, but as I told you, that is not where we are pointing. Anyway, the model is that partners are paying a fixed amount directly from their ministries of science usually, and they're paying a fee for participating to the consortium. This fee globally will contribute to the central activity. Then all the services in the platforms will be provided using the in-kind. So the variable cost will be provided by the participation of the facility. Of course, everything needs to be organized at national level, contracts needs to be written, but practically speaking, everything that is service, and this is a model which has been developed with João Mimoso, which is our finance director. And it's smart because we have a fixed cost, and that needs to be covered anyway. And the level of operation of the infrastructure can be different. We can grow without having too much troubles if everything is set this way. We are now in the preparatory phase. The preparatory phase is called IRIS-PP, and the project providing access is still the integrating activity, Hyperion CH. We have the last call in February for this project, and we will do the last access research programs throughout the first 6 months of 2019. And this is the roadmap we have to become an European Research Infrastructure Consortium. We already produced documents for the initial phase, step 1, to propose the IRIS-ERIC to the Commission. We expect these documents be ready next year. They are already in discussion. The moment is delicate because there's not just a matter of document, it's also a matter of negotiating with ministries for the cash contribution. So this, in principle, can take 1 year, but also more than one. So we will see. We point to submit step 1 at the end of 2019, probably. Then step 2, and then formally we could be a consortium in 2021. Then we will have more interesting proposal for a strong bilateral cooperation. But actually, after what you saw in the presentation of Aurélie, we already said this, but we discussed this with the group yesterday. The point is that we can have Brazilian participation to the next Infraia, and I hope that we will be this will be possible. And then we have the additional information and the suggestion by Antonio to support maybe with an Erasmus project, and the additional information by Aurélie that is a place in Brazil when in principle you can apply for having additional resources for this cooperation. So we will discuss this in the rest of these 2 days, I think. Well, thank you.
So I'm pleased to invite Professor Thais Sanjad. We will, as you see in the program here, we have 2 presentations, the Brazilian landscape and research infrastructures for heritage science, and then the role of Anticipa in Brazilian heritage science. We discussed the matter yesterday, and myself and Thais will do it all together. So please, Thais. Well, so we will play a game here, the both of us, the 2 presentations together. Brazilian landscape from research infrastructures for heritage science, and the role of Anticipa in Brazilian heritage science. We'll try to save time so that we have discussions. It's a very important time for us to put together since we are all here. So, we all know, and we took this, actually Thais took this from the IFAN website, that we have a substantial diversity in cultural heritage. Different regions, different climates, diverse materials, diverse problems. And when we talk about the problems, and we are not just talking about movable heritage or integrated heritage, we also talk about immovable, about built sites, about historic cities. You saw yesterday, Diane was speaking about the impact of, in terms of historic and contract archaeology. So the dimension of the problems we have to face is really big. And before we go on, there are 2 persons that we wanted to give recognition of their contribution. Thais, fala do professor.
Well, good morning. First of all, it's very important to remember a very special person for us that is an important interlocutor who joined Brazilian research from 4 states. Since 2011, from José Delgado Rodrigues from LINEC, knows me, Mário Mendonça, Luiz Souza, and Liane Del Lama, and approximated us to work together.
And then it's a different picture, but we cannot forget about the contribution of Professor Sgamelotti, who is a good friend of most of us here, and who has really, contributed a lot to a closer approximation between us in Brazil and also other colleagues from Latin America and European colleagues. Professor Bruno Brunetti is a very close friend and colleague at the University of Perugia. So we thank Professor Sgamelotti for this, and we are playing samba here. Pode passar. Nós vamos bater bola aqui.
I think that you.
Now, this was the, actually, I think it was the other auditorium, they look very similar. But this is when we first met here in 2015. The Hyperion meeting was in Rio. So we had two meetings, one in Rio with the European researchers, and then the executives of the Hyperion, they came to Belo Horizonte, and we had the chance to discuss, to see the model, to discuss possibilities. But that was really a step forward, a stone mark for the creation of our nowadays legal Antecipa. So that was the very beginning. And like this event here, you know, since we are running with a very low budget in terms of sponsorship, both in 2015 and today, our colleagues from Brazil, they are all coming on their own with either research funding or even personal funding. So in terms of horizons, we hopefully in the next one, since we have now a fiscal, since we exist legally, and we will try the best we can to find more funding for our in 2 years' time for our next meeting. But this is the group which got together here in Belo Horizonte in 2015.
This is the Antecipa trajectory. In December 2015, it was the first meeting of the Associated Laboratories Network. It was promoted by LACICOR. The formal participants of representatives of several Brazilian research laboratories in its board of directors. The formal registration of Antecipa occurred only in May 2018. This week is our first national symposium. Now, we need to give great visibility of this infrastructure and its importance for the preservation of the Brazilian cultural heritage.
So, this is not exhaustive what we're going to show here, because our expectation is really to grow. But so far, we have, in terms of infrastructure and dedicated laboratories within the realm of heritage science, conservation science, up in the north, we have the Federal University of Pará, LACOR, here represented by Professor Thais Sanjar. In Bahia, NTPR, which was presented by Professor Mário Mendonça, the first day of the Antecipa meeting. Here at UFMG, we have several laboratories already working, but the possibilities are much greater. Our colleague, Professor Carla Bausweit, who is member of the executive committee of the Center of Microscopy Center. Most of you know already the facilities, and we've been working hard to try to promote activities. Yesterday, there was a visit with other colleagues, and the possibilities are very good. Carla will talk more about this. But many other departments, like the physics department, we have a very strong contribution of the colleagues from the physics department for this meeting in particular. The chemistry department as well. And biology, not just questions related to insects or to, mostly insects or other deterioration agents, but also, as you could see in the first day, the questions related to DNA analysis, ancient DNA, sample handling, analytical optimization for DNA analysis, and so on. So this is growing within our own community here at UFMG, and hopefully we will also have in other universities the same awareness growing. Lemaitre was represented here at Hyperion in 2015. From the University of São Paulo, Laboratório de Espectroscopia Molecular.
Estudos do Patrimônio Cultural.
Yes, and the other one is Studios do Patrimônio, Studies of Cultural Heritage, and this, Lamfi.
I don't
Se alguém da USP lembrar? It's IOMB Laboratory for Material Analysis, here represented by Professor Márcia Risuto. State University of Londrina. Applied Physics. Yes, Laboratório de Física Nuclear Aplicada, Applied Nuclear Physics Laboratory. And I don't have a picture of it here, but most of you have seen it on the news. The Sirius infrastructure just inaugurated in Campinas. So this is a very promising facility, and unfortunately, Professor Douglas Galanti, he's in Hungary this week. Reason why he's not here, but we talked to him before this meeting, so we have his willingness and he's eager to continue, and we also are. So this is not exhaustive. There are many other laboratories, but we are giving credits to those who came for the first Hyperion meeting, and the proposal and the expectation is really to grow. So just the pictures of our laboratories. This is us in the field, the Conservation Science Lab. But as you see here, we have LAPA, Archaeological Preservation, eLab, Scientific Documentation, LabTech, Rochas, dealing with stones, Laboratory of Environmental Comfort at the School of Architecture. So these are just a few pictures of the NTPR, as Professor Mário Mendonça showed here last time. They deal more. What's interesting to reiterate here is that we are really trying to break the barriers between movable and immovable. Because we deal with sciences, so the materials, they play certain roles within the movable heritage, but they also play certain roles within the immovable heritage. And even when we talk about immaterial heritage, we do have a role there. Because if we talk, for example, about cheese production, it's all related to biochemistry, to climate, to environment, and so on. So these divisions, they are didactic, but for us, it's very important that we keep them at the same level so that we can really deal with different aspects of the preservation. And then we can even go to questions related to historic centers, urban questions, like the last 2 days there was an event right here at the other side, and they deal with monitoring of populations using imaging techniques. So we really try to have the same basis and to work with heritage as a platform.
This is about Lakori, some pictures of our working in other states of North region, and some work about our equipments. Okay.
Mm-hmm. In terms of equipments, most of the labs are well acquainted with equipments. This is also important to reiterate because we are not starting from the scratch. Most of the laboratories are already working with services to the community, so the professional companies, the enterprises dealing with conservation, they know about us, but they should know more. The graduate programs, we already share facilities, like the example by Professor Mário Mendonça, his students coming here, or Thais students coming here, or us sending our students to other laboratories. So we have already a basic network, but we're going to focus now is how to improve this and to see also based on the models that Luca presented here.
And we, together with another institutes of our university, like Geoscience Center and Chemistry Center.
Yes, it's always a relationship with other departments. And then, normally it happens, in the real world, what happens? It happens that one head of laboratory is more interested in dealing with us, in exchanging with us, and this means the door. Like Carla has been the door to the physics department. But then it's very interesting how we first meet someone, and then it opens up the whole department, because she has colleagues, and those colleagues are interested as well. It's very interesting. I got to know about one specific project about hyperspectral imaging in preparation for this meeting, and this was happening not even 300 meters away from our laboratory. And this is going to be presented here in this meeting.
And this is Eliane in Belém, working with us in the Soledade Cemetery.
We've been also there.
Yes.
So shortly, a scenario. We have teaching programs. Since 2008, we have undergraduate programs in conservation based at federal universities. This is important for those who don't know how it works here in Brazil, but the federal university system is where the research is based. That's where the activities towards scientific development, equipment development, training, it's at the federal university system. So, oops. At the beginning of the year 2000, we've had an investment by the National Research Council on the formation of networks. And I should mention here that Professor Evandro Mirra, who is now deceased, was a key person for that. Professor Evandro Mirra was the deputy rector of the Federal University of Minas Gerais, and then later on he was the president of the National Research Council, so it was his initiative to start, to open calls for networks in science and technology applied to conservation of cultural heritage. So at that time, there were some calls, and we've had projects presented and selected. It was a bit confusing at that time, and I went to Brasilia because they've launched the calls, and they wanted to form networks. So we went all there from Brazil, from several states in Brazil, São Paulo, Rio, Minas, Bahia. But when we arrived there, because we went there with our proposals ready, and we were thinking about networks inside. So UFMG went with a proposal for a network within UFMG. So when we got there, they said, no, 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 we want networks outside. We want UFMG dealing with UFRJ, dealing with University of São Paulo, and so on. So we were there for 3 or 4 days, and we had to rearrange everything and present it again. So this then has led to 3 main networks in Brazil with those representatives of universities, of conservation centers, of research groups who went to Brasilia at the National Research Council meeting. So this ended up with 3 main networks. The Network of Restoration on Structures and Materials, coordinated by Professor Mário Mendonça. The Network on Methods and Conservation Processes, coordinated by us here. And something happened with the presentation. There is the last one on biological deterioration, which was coordinated by Professor Christine Gaillard in the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. So, in terms of undergraduate courses, what is our situation nowadays? Since 2008, with the REUNI by the federal government, we've had here at UFMG a undergraduate course in conservation, here at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, a undergraduate course in conservation, and here, all the way in the south, at the Federal University of Pelotas, another undergraduate course in conservation. We also had an undergraduate course at the Pontifícia Catholic University of São Paulo, and these courses are now running. The one at PUC São Paulo is under, yes, some sort of transition, but the other ones, they have their own teams of teachers. They have, in different ways, their scientific teams, their laboratories, and most of the teams have at least the PhD level. So just to give you an idea, here in Belo Horizonte at UFMG, we are a total of 27. I was going to say 22. And out of these, last time I counted, we are 16 with a PhD out of 22. So if it's 27, so we have more. So most of the people have already a training and an academic qualification. And now it's a question of us working more together. In some spheres, we are already doing this, but it's a long way to go. And I say this also because of the students. The students in Rio, the students in Pelotas, and the students here at UFMG. We have to find more occasions, more opportunities to get together and to exchange, to present posters, to present papers, and to discuss research works together. Besides this, we also have those training courses at the graduate level. But then it's very diversified. We can think about the beginning, like it was shown here. The SECRE, they are now a professional masters. So what was their specialization course changed into a professional masters, and they keep working on built heritage. Most of the executives and professionals dealing with conservation of architecture, they were trained in Bahia. We have at the Federal University of Minas Gerais a master's and PhD in sustainable heritage and built environment. So we have together economy, engineering, social sciences, all within this umbrella, dealing with preservation of cultural heritage at an interdisciplinary level. We have graduate courses at the Federal University of Pelotas. Thiago, for example, who is here, he's tutoring there as well. So there is a bigger diversity in terms of the titles. In Pernambuco, it was presented here about the SESI, but the SESI is gone. I'm sorry to say this, but SESI, the way it was created in Pernambuco, Marco Antonio is here, we've been following this very closely. SESI was created by Professor Silvio Zanchetti at the Federal University of Pernambuco, and they were dealing more with urban questions. But then, Professor Zanchetti and most of the team, they retired, so SESI was an entity, a legal entity. So they've closed that entity. The name still continues, but the mission and how they operate is now different. So we shouldn't count at this moment with SESI as a training institution at the graduate level, as it was before. So this is a question that we should also think, because it lacks within our system. It's a gap within our system. Thais, podia...
Well, about this course in Brazil, it's very important to understand like how CAPES works. And we have division of knowledge areas. All of us are acting in master and doctor's degrees programs, but in not a specific area on cultural heritage. We have 3 different colleges, and each one has 9 big areas of knowledge. The first of all is Biological and Health Science College. The other one is hard, technological, and multidisciplinary areas, multidisciplinary science.
This is within, CAPS is our agency for graduate training. They are the ones who give the funding, who do the monitoring, and who organize the training within all of the countries. So we all related to them. We have to, every 2 years, every 3 years, we have to do all of the reports and so on. So they are very important for us because they do the policy in terms of graduate programs and graduate qualification in Brazil.
And
yeah, undergraduate is different. Huh?
yes, and it's another one. And there are 2 the humanities college. Each area has roles and specifics. And I am at a postgraduate program in architecture. Luis are in arts. In many of, yes, more interdisciplinary. Yes, and we, some research are in chemistry, geosciences, and we are not together. This is a national strategy of science, technology, and innovation for the 2016-2022 of Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovation, and Communication. And there are important actors. The first of one are the politicians. Another one is, can you development agency. Another one. This is the most important agencies.
Yeah.
CNPq, CAPES, FINEP, BNDES, EMBRAP, and FEPS.
Yeah. CNPq is like, it's the CNR in Brazil. CAPES is the agency for graduate programs. FINEP, it's the agency of the National Research Council. BNDES is the one we've had a presentation here yesterday. This is more, EMBRAP is more like an interface between industry and research in science. And very important here, which was shown by, where is Aurélie? Oh, over there? Yeah. Aurélie has shown earlier the FAPs. FAPs are the state agencies for research funding. So some states have their FAPs well established and active. Some states don't. Some states are running into economic problems, like us, Minas Gerais now. FAPEMIG has lots of problems, but they still have their policy and their willingness to get back to the scene. But nowadays it's complicated. It depends on the economic situation of the particular state. And so we also depend on them.
And we are here, the operator of science, technology, and innovation. Okay. Well, this is very important to us to understand these kinds of actors, because there are strategic themes to support the research area in Brazil, present in a document from FINEP and Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovation, and Communication. These most important themes are these, to support research in Brazil. There is nothing about culture directly.
So we have to find our ways how to fit us within this scenario.
And some research support calls reflect, obviously, the strategic themes of research of Brazil. This cause is from the last cause of CNPq, nothing about culture. Calls from CAPES, nothing about culture. And calls from FINEP. And the last one from FINEP was about specific themes, and it was there is a change here. But some groups of cultural heritage had to submit together with the materials group. And it's a it's a way to submit projects of this course.
We shouldn't forget here that FINEP had, after the National Research Council did the call at the beginning of the year 2000, FINEP had also a substantial investment in this field, but it was more focused. We've had a very good help from them here in our laboratory, so we were able to run a project for 5 years and to acquire most of the scientific instrumentation we have nowadays. But there are other actors outside of this sphere as well, which can be very helpful for us. Like, for example, the State Attorney's Office, Ministério Público, both federal and also state. Because, for example, here at La Sicor, the most expensive equipments were acquired with a project submitted to the Ministério Público Federal. So they are very good partners, and I should thank them here as partners of our projects. So there is light at the end of the tunnel outside of this sphere, but we have to try to find our ways here as well.
And we need to change this scenario.
So the main purpose of Anticipa for this next 2 years, we'll be trying the best to strengthen the heritage science in Brazil and also to promote the field within the other South American countries. And we are already doing this. We have already here representatives from other countries, like Fernando Marte from Argentina. And tomorrow, we'll also have a discussion with colleagues from Chile and Colombia. So we are looking very positively for the future. We try the best to strengthen the research groups through networking, collaborative networking. We will try the best to encourage the creation of graduate programs focused on heritage science-related themes as a broad, because it's very diverse. For example, there are many programs on social memory. In some of them, we are already there, like in Pelotas, but there are others, and they're running on their own, so it's a matter of trying to get closer. And finally, we'll try the best to do the promotion of the creation of heritage science research within the funding agencies, as we've already shown. Oh, we're getting to the end. So, this is a translation by Vinícius de Moraes. Deixa o meu amor ser eterno até que ele acabe. Let the documents be eternal until they are gone. This is a São Sebastião which came to us at Secor many years ago. And vamos viver a memória until the object ends. But the role of Anticipa is to work on the object materials and not let them to end. Thank you. So please, Luca, Aurélie, we have a, yep. we are running late, but we still can have a short discussion. No? Yes, sure. Okay.
Do you agree that the coffee break in the agenda is too short? Yes.
Okay, I'm not gonna say, come on.
So if you make too many questions, it will be shorter. And actually, we will be here after the coffee break as well. So.
No, because não, porque está transmitindo. Professor Carlos
Okay.
Basílio, physicist from the Deputy Director of
Good morning
Research.
to all of you. Thank you very much for your kind presentations. If I look, because you said, I was a little bit impressed about the size of the infrastructure you are proposing. I'm not from this field, I don't know exactly what you are talking about, but when you said the number of countries, people in the infrastructures, I got a little bit amazed, because this is quite a big, expensive stuff. How much will be the budget of this stuff at the end? What are you expecting to have to manage at the end?
Yeah, we have figures for that. Actually, we expect to start in a group of, let's say, 12 to 15 countries. So that was the steady state. This group should not include Germany, which in Europe is a big player, because simply the participation of Germany in our budget is shifts €500,000. Anyway, without Germany, we are pointing to have €2 million per year for fixed costs.
2 million euros.
2 million per year for fixed cost, allowing a group of 12 of people plus some directors in the central hub to handle all the things. We have a strong activity in European projects, which is handled by one of the members of our coordination office. The activity is already there, even if the infrastructure is not yet started. And with this activity, we are exploiting the value of the IRIS label, which being in the roadmap, it is carrying an added value for participants to European projects. And that part of the coordination office will be variable, because the more projects enters and the more resources we will centrally have. I know of several research infrastructures in Europe that are having this policy of doing European research projects, also because due to the size of the network, it will be very easy for us to foster an efficient matchmaking between partners in the face of future calls. Frankly, in Europe, we suffer the same problem you have here in Brazil. There's no clear heritage science research area defined. In Horizon 2020, it wasn't there. Anyways, calls for heritage science are there, and probably will be also in Horizon Europe. We are still working to see if heritage science in Horizon Europe will be better defined, because it will be strange. It is strange on the side of Europe to have one of the 50 infrastructure for heritage science in the roadmap, but not a clear program for supporting heritage science in the Horizon Europe. So that is why we are having some contacts, and we will see how it will end. Anyway, we are just now have a good success with submitting European projects. So we are already taking some resources from that side, and this will probably increase in the future. It could be a small figure to handle such a big complexity, but we know the cost of the integrating activity, and so we can do some guess which are not totally blind.
Algum outro comentário? I'm pointing to my computer.
I would just like to emphasize that Luis is keeping highlighting the material aspects of the Antecipa abrangence or override, and we are intended also to deal with the immaterial aspects of the cultural heritage management as well, like documentation and exhibitions and extroversion. So our association can also be affiliated like museologists or
Yeah, sure.
curators and so on. Just a small comment on that. Yeah, see.
I have more or less the same situation in Europe. There is a group which is around the French. French people are pushing a lot for the infrastructure to be, let's say, object-oriented, but I refuse to close the doors because I believe that in the future we will handle more than just objects. I need to add that I'm a physicist. From my point of view, there's nothing intangible. Heritage intangible means a kind of metaphysics. It's not any kind of heritage is tangible because even if it's transmitted, it becomes tangible in the moment into which it is transmitted in some physical form. So I am against all labels because usually with labels you divide, and I don't like to divide. That's
Luca, I participated of the meeting in Amsterdam in 2016, and one concept that it was introduced in the meeting was sustainability. It was a very important concept because the Millennium Development Goals. And today, our Brazilian universities are doing a great HUD network among universities around the country, but outside of the country, in a program of internationalization of knowledge and training and studies and everything well. So Aries is a kind of center very different of universities, despite you have a lot of members that are presented in university. How we can produce some kind of connection between us, between this program and the program that you are conducting down there. And one thing, it's very important when you show that ICRON is the institution that are conducing the questions that happen outside of European communities. Today, one thing worries me a lot because sometimes we are not in the place that need us. You understand?
yeah, perfectly.
Like in Brazil, we have a lot of centers of research, but we are doing a project in Mozambique, and the whole country, they don't have at really one center of cultural heritage science too. So how to stay in this place? The place that really need our knowledge.
Yeah,
You
yes,
understand
yeah,
me?
thanks.
That's right.
But now I have two options. Either we jump the coffee break and I answer you, or I answer you in the discussion after the coffee break, because it's exactly that we want to discuss in the panel after the break. Yeah.
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 he's
And
the
I will
chair.
answer you. I have some proposal.
Okay, so we'll close the session and we go for coffee break. Thank you very much to Aurélie and Luca, and also to Thais, and thank you all.
Vamos começar. Então, eu vou compor a mesa, ok? Luiz, vai ser melhor colocar os 4 aqui ou de novo chamar um de cada vez? Senão a gente não vê, né? E vou chamar o primeiro. Porque aí eu vou chamar o Luca, depois o Candeias, depois o Fernando Mate e por fim o Carlos Pinheiro. O Carlos Basílio. Eu acabei de me apresentar ele, mas, quer dizer, ele não disse que é da física. Ele é o pró-reitor de pesquisa?
Ele é da pró-reitor de pesquisa, mas ele é o que pró-reitor da área de networks, de redes.
Ah, de redes.
É, diretoria de redes da pró-reitor de pesquisa.
Uhum. Let's begin the panel. I'd like to inform that there was some changes on the composition of this panel. We will have a panel on exploring best practices in bilateral cooperation. How do we make our collaborations more effective? And the members of this panel will be Luca Pesati, CNR, Antonio Candeias, from the University of Évora, Fernando Marti, from the National University of San Martin, and Carlos Basílio Pinheiro, Director for Research of the Federal University of Minas Gerais. So we'll begin with Luca Pesati, okay? And each one we will have about from 10 to 15 minutes for each presentation, okay? So to respect the total time of this panel.
Do you think we need the panelists here, or we?
No, I will. I think it's better to have each one.
Well, great.
Here, okay? So Luca, please.
Thank you, Carlos. So, considering the point where we are, I have a bit of information more than the other Europeans because I'm here and I attended the meeting of Anticipa in the previous 2 days. So my overview of the situation is a bit better. But considering where we are, and especially considering what we did in the last 3 years on both sides, I think that the situation is quite good. And considering what you showed, that you are making plans for the next 3 years, and we are making plans for the next 3 years. So it could be interesting to try to trace a roadmap and to try to define where we want to be in 3 years from today. Because in 3 years from today, probably in Europe, we will be able to have the legal form for allowing a better operation, even for international cooperations. A legal form that you already have. Anticipa has got the legal form. What is missing to Anticipa? Resources. We have got resources. What is missing to the IRIS? The legal form. So it's rather clear what we need to do on both sides in the next 3 years. You need to secure more resources, and we need to secure a legal form. Because I believe that, considering the state of operation in Brazil, the natural counterpart for this relationship, for having a bilateral agreement or anything else with the future IRIS, is Anticipa. I don't see any other candidates for this role. It's rather wonderful, on my experience, to see that a network entirely built of universities is working so good together. I tried in Italy to create a network out of universities. I think it would have blown up in the first 6 months of operation. So it's wonderfully good to see how we are going together. I advise you to add some spice to the group, because considering the experience we have, museums, is an ingredient that is mandatory in such a national group. And then I don't know the state of operation of your research, for instance, the Research Council. In Europe, in France, in Spain, is strong enough to be a major player. Probably in those countries, the glue keeping together the infrastructure are the national research councils. But here you have already the legal form, so why? I don't see reasons not to use the Anticipa legal form for any future cooperation. So let's say we are starting a transition phase of 3 years. And I expect that we could plan to have a formal agreement in 2021 when we will be ready. Because the problem, we don't have a legal form for signing such an agreement. You already have, even if you don't have the resources. So if you are able to organize Anticipe as the infrastructure in Brazil, and I think you are going to do that, securing resources, securing... So I suggest Anticipe to write down a business plan, frankly. Write down a business plan to understand how to operate in Brazil in 2020 when you will have the... Then I advise Anticipe to liaise with the government, because heritage science need to be a topic in research. If you want to have sustainability, long-term sustainability, heritage science should be something recognized at political level as one of the mission of research. And sometimes the obvious things are not obvious at all. For instance, heritage science is not yet well acknowledged in Europe, where is not yet well acknowledged in Italy. If you think of heritage, it sounds so strange that what we can do, what we could do as scientists is not acknowledged by the system in a certain sense. As I told to some of you, the really great breakthrough of IRIS is not on the scientific point of view. All the science group creating IRIS were already there and already working at a very good level. The added value of IRIS has been only the political added value. For the first time, Europe has got in political document a label claiming heritage science. Heritage science is not anymore hidden. It's well defined. It's one of the research infrastructures in Europe. And so we need to start from things like this and the fact that we want to work together. Another personal experience with politicians of 20-something countries that I encountered in the last 6, 7 years is politicians love when you go to them with association. If you show to politicians that you are representing a group, you solve lots of their problems. For instance, in some European country, I don't tell the name, there is this problem that a good heritage science group, but they are going to the Ministry of Science, one, the other, and I spoke with the minister, with the representative, the directors in the Ministry of Science, and they told me, we have the resources, but we cannot give the resources because they are coming one and the other. We don't know to whom to give the resources for this. So they need to have a plan and to show up to the ministry all together. Look, we have a plan. This should be a move that I suggest. Because you solve their problems. If you show that you have already a system created, that is also across the states, so it's really a pan-Brazilian system, we're almost there, but do include museums. So that is my 2 cents for the discussion of this morning.
Thank you, Luca. Now I will call, please, Antonio Candeias from the Évora University for his statements.
Obrigado.
So thank you very much. Good morning all. So I wasn't expecting to talk in the morning, but anyway, Luca asked me to say some words about cooperation. And of course, so there is a huge affinity between Portugal and Brazil, so we are in fact the same. Regarding the cooperation, I think that Portugal can have a big role in terms how to establish or to facilitate the cooperation with the European Union, and particularly with the ERIS in our case. And why do I say this? I say this because besides our common goals and common culture and common projects that we can put together, there are also some specific mechanisms for cooperation between our two countries. So, as you probably know, there are bilateral programs for research and also for training, both from Portugal and Brazil. And we can explore this to start working together in these areas. In a more broader sense, so the European Union as was already said by Aurelie, programs for cooperation. There is one bilateral with the European Union itself, and there is the Erasmus+. And for the Erasmus+, and one that I'm looking at, it's the alliances, and the other one is the capacity building. And for instance, for all of these, the Brazil and for instance Argentina can be members of these projects. So they can be partners in these projects, and these projects allow mainly to cooperate. So I don't think that the idea of Brazil and Anticipa as a whole to participate in the ERIS broader consortium intends to put the science in Europe. The best thing that we can do by doing this cooperation is in fact to share how things are being done in one case and how things are being done in the other case, and to use it to make a common standards in terms of research. So, and at the end, that the research here in Brazil can have the same type of integration as in the European Union. Another thing that I think it's important for people to cooperate. In many cases, there's no need for big financing. There is just a thing of positioning. So we just have to see. So I myself can cooperate with you all. So it's not the problem of financing, as a matter of fact. Well, there is some problem of financing, but I think that the best thing is if we are open to cooperate, and in which terms we are open to cooperate. That's the main thing. So the idea of using ERIS, of participating in ERIS, and for Brazil and for Argentina and other countries from the Latin America, I think should be to share experiences, and at the end, that we can start cooperate at a broader level and start to have the same type of approaches in terms of research, and in terms of facilities, for instance, it could be interesting that we could get, for instance, for the DigiLab, a broader scope, and for these platforms to have a wider representation. A world, in fact, the best practice would be that we could integrate all the world digital resources in this field. if you want to cooperate with me, I'm open to cooperation. That's the main thing. I don't have anything else to say. It's just I think we are all in the same phase. So we are in a wave, and we are all in the same. That's the thing. Hmm? Yeah. Yeah. Just for the capacity building, there is now a call that is open until the 8th of February. So we still have time. We can try to put together a project on capacity building. These projects are between 500,000 and 1 million euros. And this could be used for mobility, mainly. So the idea at this phase, I don't think it's resources, I don't think. Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. So, but I'm open for it. If you think that we could put together a project with IRIS and with a consortium from different places here, we can try to do it. Or that's the thing. There is another, which are the alliances, the smart alliances and the knowledge alliances, and I think this could also be. I didn't see those, the deadlines for those, but those are also opportunities that we have. I could say that there is another hypothesis, that is to try to use the big companies that are now working in our countries, and to see if they can help us in this in terms of mobility. So we are, I think that presently the most important thing is that we can go from one side to another. And for instance, with Embraer, which has factories in Europe and in Portugal particularly, and in Évora particularly, they support researchers to go to Portugal. So Brazilian researchers, they have to be Brazilian. So this could be an opportunity. We can say, for instance, if we organize any ARIS meeting in the next year, for instance, and it is held in Évora or in Lisbon, whatever, we could try to support your coming there and to participate and to see how things are at that time in ARIS, and how we can go forward with the integration of your universities or with your association. Do you want me to tell anything more? I don't have anything else to say. No? Ok. Ok. Muito obrigado. Desculpem lá.
Thank you, Antonio. Now let's have on the line Fernando Marti now.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to apologize. I wasn't prepared for this neither, so I learned that I have to be part of the panel at the end of our first section, and I learned that I have to speak when I was coming back from our first normal coffee break. For those of you who have been here the previous day, you know how short they are. So anyway, so I have like Antonio's presentation time to prepare something to say. Something that I find interesting is that Antecipa has a legal status, yes, and ARIS has the resources. So from Argentina, a positive view should be say, okay, we have just two problems, okay? We're missing the legal status and the resources. But something I would like to consider before that is that it's the political context of the situation. And it's Europe has the European community. And Brazil is not Argentina. We have seen the presentation of Luis, and when I saw the map and the distribution of the lab, it's not the same situation that we have in our country. In our country, more or less half of the population and perhaps a higher percentage of the resources are located in just one city, okay? So that's an extra challenge that we have. And in that sense, I would like to remark something that been already said and that we were discussing during the coffee break, and is the possible role of Antecipa on all of this. Antecipa, I think, is a very, very good example. It could be a very good seed that it could develop in the future, like the Irish project, of course. So, having said this, I think it's not everything so bad in Argentina. First of all, we have some good examples, like the national microscopy system. In Argentina, all the microscopy centers along the country have united them and create a system, a national system. So now you can get an appointment on any of the facilities, you know, through an online application, and then you can follow all the analysis, and in the future it's planned that with a webcam, you're going to be able to be part of the analyze process from your computer. So I think that's a good example. It could be expanded, and perhaps as you're doing here, to involve these same people in the force. On the other hand, I was thinking to say something, but Antonio got first here, so he had the advantage and he said first. But what is important is that being in our situation give us the advantage that we are not complained to commit the same mistake. So we can learn from what have already been done in Europe, of course, and here in Brazil with Antecipa. We have in Argentina a couple of collaborations with Europe and with the rest of South America. The only problem is that they're based on personal relationship. So this lab interacting with this other one, so on. For instance, I have more relationship with Brazil, with Luis, than with some other labs in Argentina. So the only thing that we should do is that to try to write down, okay, here where we are, here where we want to be, how should we do this? Okay, let's see what Europe and Brazil have done and try to do it. In that sense, of course, I agree 100% what Antonio said before. The only way to get this done is collaborate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Now, the last one, Carlos Basílio Pinheiro from the Federal University of Minas Gerais. Okay.
I was afraid when this invited to come here to speak to you, because I'm not at all from this environment, so I prepared something. So let me just show you. I will speak in the name of the administration. I will give you some comments on when you said best, because when I realized that you are talking about effective collaboration, I will tell you what we are doing in the administration, how some of those things are approached inside the the institutional program of internationalization of the university. So I'll just give you some pictures, okay? First of all is this one. This one is the picture that's very important for the university nowadays. This is the matrix of institutional internationalization projects. Here you have 4 major themes. I have to read them. I have to come close. My eyes are not so good anymore. Sustainability is the first one. I can look there. Sustainability is the new big theme. New technology and frontiers of science is the second one. health and well-being, and human rights. So the university decided those will be the big themes for internationalization. And those lines here are the axis that will follow, that will go inside this one. And hopefully, take a look, there is something, traditions, cultures, and arts. So for the ones who are here saying that there is not clear, let me say, clear definition of the university, here there is one theme that goes directly inside the matrix of internationalization of the university. So there is an opportunity here. But I have to give you this is the good picture, but I have to give you also some numbers, okay? Because that's where the problem comes. First of all is this one. So here I'm showing you this program that the university is starting now. There was a meeting last week to announce this program at the university. The budget of the program is 554 million of reals, okay, in 4 years' time. The spending policies will follow these metrics here I showed you before. Strictly, it's very precise. I'll tell you why. And there is a managing committee. There are five academics of the university and one foreigner. But just to give you the amount of money, because there was I think this is an opportunity from one side, but the other side, I have a criticism. I have a criticism on this program, because the money is like this. Take a look. So if you take the money, and if you decide to pay sabbatical postdocs for our academics, for example, 1 year, if the guy will spend that time 1 year in the United States, there will be only 430 senior sabbatical scholarships. So, but we are 3,200 academics at the university. If you are talking about sandwich programs for the PhD students, this amount of money is enough to pay 770 year of PhD, of sandwich PhD programs. But only last year, we graduated 405 and 56 PhDs at the university. So when you look at the picture like this, you don't feel very excited, because despite lots of zeros here, the money is not that much, okay? But anyway, is that what we have for the moment? And that's it. There are some problems with this program, some limitations that were imposed by CAPES, by the official agents that pays for the program. Some of them are here. First of all, 66% of the money has to go in what they call outgoing programs. So they will pay for travel and accommodation for short missions, research expenses up to the limit of 10,000 reals only per project, and scholarships. For all of them, there will be specific language proficiency exams, okay, requirements. And the scholarships goes for sandwich PhD programs, junior and senior postdocs, summer and winter schools. That's what the program can pay. However, 34% of this money has to be spent in what they call incoming. So young talent attraction, it's an opportunity for foreign postdocs to spend the time with us, visiting scholars. So the opportunity of having some academics for other universities, for the countries among us during some time, and of course for postdoc in Brazil. So that's how the money has to be split. But now comes another problem. 70% of the money has to be spent in the following list of countries. It's there. The two ones in red are the only Latin American countries. All the others are in Europe and Asia. Okay? So 70% of that money has to be spent in those countries, and that's it. 30% of the money can be spent with other countries. Just to let you know, Portugal is not here. Okay? Okay, so I'm just telling you, I'm not making the rules. Okay? At the administration, we try our best. So that's it. So I don't know what the guys inside CAPES, how they thought this program, but that's the result of their vision. Okay, so move forward. I knew you would be impressed about this list of countries. I was impressed. Okay, how this is going to work? There will be periodic calls at the post-graduation, the graduation administration office at the university. So there will be regular calls. We are organizing a submission proposal system for that. There will be a specific submission proposal system on place for the beginning of the next year. Teams have to be necessarily inside the ones of the matrix, one of the teams inside the matrix. So everyone who asks for that money has to put himself inside the teams of the matrix of the print program. What else? There is a second possibility. This is individual calls. We can apply for this money individually, but the graduate programs at the university can also organize themselves in a sort of consortium and propose strategic proposals based on the needs of the graduate programs, okay? Specific graduation programs. Everything will be evaluated by ad hoc committees. They will likely to be 100% external. But the results will be monitored by the management committee of the university, the 6 guys, 5 from the university, 1 from the outside, and 1 foreigner. And this is how the staff will be for the next 4 years. Okay, and what we do, why I'm here, and what can I bring to you from the research administration office? Because we are in position to help you with information. Our role there is to check database looking for effective collaboration. So most of the pictures that you have seen nowadays at the university going around when you talk about internationalization, we have access to database, and we produce such numbers and such studies for people who are interested in. So what we can do, we can look for we look for the academic graduation, postdoc, and visit scholars cooperation. So we look for countries, institutions, academics. You can go and search specifically who is talking to who, in which subject people are talking to each other, if there is an effective result of this collaboration, a document, whenever this document, we count because this is important to justify the application and so on. So that's what we do there. And out of our office there are numbers like those ones. Huh? So this, for example, is just a picture to show you, because we map, for example, for the print, when we realize the problem with the list of the countries, we are a little bit worried because we knew our community was partially educated abroad. We are about About 2,000 of us have been outside, have been abroad for a PhD or for a sabbatical postdoc afterwards. So it was important to see who is this, how much international is the university, and where we are more and where we are less international. And here, for example, there is a picture showing, look, colors here are, blues are the areas according to CAPS, not according to CAPS, sort of, where we have PhD, academics with PhD abroad, abroad. Every country we took every country in account here. So you see that the less international area at the university is clinical, preclinical, and health. And the most international one is computer science from this perspective. But when you put sandwich, this PhD sandwich program, so change a little bit. The situation is about the same, but you see that business and economics, physical science, and computer science are the most international already at the university. And law and the health are the less international in the university. And so when you go to the other side of this picture, for example, it's interesting because you see how much of us have been educated inside the university. So most of the guys of the law, for example, law area and health have got their PhD at the UFMG. So that's just to show you a kind of picture that we offer to the community and to the administration to make their policies. What else? Let me just to finish. We also map the countries where we have been studying or abroad. So you see here for this list that the United States is the country where most of us have done our PhDs, most of the academics at the university, and most of us used to go for the postdoc afterwards. So you see here, France, United Kingdom, Canada, Spain is here, is not in the list of the print. Portugal is here, is not in the list of the print. And that's it. Okay. So this kind of numbers, we help you with whenever you want to make an application. We can organize. We can help you with the database we have, looking for specific collaboration or objective collaboration with countries and people and subjects all over the world. Just to give you a final picture here, a final picture of what we can do. Last week, there were 39 different universities from all over the world attending the print seminar. So one of the pictures that we have done for them, for the administration, was the following. Here, we have counted the numbers of documents produced between academics of those institutions and the ones from our institution. So in the y-axis here, you have the citation of those papers, of the papers produced together with those institutions. And in the X line here, you have the number of documents. So, but we have not counted the numbers. I just took the average and did a sort of average, how much you deviate for the average. So 0 is the average. So you could see here that the most of the universities that have been here last week, they are concrete, or they are effective collaboration in health and well-being. Most of the green dots are all related to health and well-being. The blue ones are for new technology and science, and sustainability. Only one university. We are collecting the amount of documents produced by affiliation by academics affiliating in our university and each one of those universities, okay? There was no university here with collaboration in human rights, where the arts and culture and are in the matrix, just to let you know. But doesn't mean that those universities were here because we're invited and decide to show up at the university, showing themselves to us, but doesn't mean that we are going to make specific collaboration with those universities. But it's interesting to show you something like that because we can map with the tools we have at the administration how strategic can be a collaboration with any university, group, people around the world. So if you want to write applications and if you need numbers, and if it's important somehow to write your application, we can help you with such a kind of information very easily nowadays. Okay, and here you could see that the idea was when Sandra showed this, the dean showed this at the opening of the print seminar. She was showing something like the idea would be to move all the universities that we are not collaborating very much yet to the right side of this picture here, where there are universities that we are collaborating in reasonable amount of documents with high impact. So this is to show you that the best is this upper square here, where citation, there are many jobs with higher citation, with a higher citation, because this brings, this put the jobs, the works developed together in evidence, and that's good for everybody involved. So to be at the right side here is what we should target in the future. So that's what I would like to show to you. And just to let you know, don't forget those two numbers here. They are very important, because print is an opportunity, but the money is not that much. So, but for the mobility, is the money we have. And it's very important for bringing people here and moving ourselves around the world to keep in contact with the important developing centers, scientific centers all over the world. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, now, I'd like to call the other members of the panel to be here. Please, Antonio, please. Antonio Candeias, please. So, to answer the questions of the public, if they are. Questions?
coordinator of the graduate program in Beauty, Environment, and Sustainable Heritage. We have representatives in most of the committees that you showed to us today. I have a question. I could not participate in the meeting because I was in travel. And, but it was a point that some emails that the PRPG sent to us is that we can open opportunity to introduce new institutions. In the case of Portugal, I have one question. I really, because the last program of CAPS introduced the idea of AULP, the support of countries with language, Portuguese language. And we don't have in this program Mozambique, Angola, Timor-Leste, Portugal, a lot of countries of Portuguese language. Would it be possible to introduce it or not at Release?
It will, up to the 30% of the limitation is the amount of money available for other countries that are not in the big list I showed you. So the money is limited to 30% of the budget.
But so it's possible?
It is possible, but it's competitive, don't forget.
Okay, because St.
There is no
is a
saved
good
money.
partner.
There is no saved money for this or that. So we can spend up to 30% of the money in this, but it's not obliged to. Okay?
It's a political decision, this range of countries, because the last government improved we became close of Portuguese language countries.
The list of CAPs, nobody understood.
Yeah, I understand.
Nobody understood why this list, why like that. Nobody understood.
My question is for Luca. I want to know, or if possible, if you can discuss a little about how you organize this data, how to make a common database for everybody, and how we can put all information in this idea of this data center.
Thanks, Marcia. We will discuss this also later, but the general idea for the moment is that we have so many problems to solve, so we started a working group about the digital platform, because we need to have also an implementation document, what we want to do and how. I was, as the Digital Heritage Conference in San Francisco, speaking with the group of IRIS supporters in the US, which is a small group with big institutions for the moment. And what I suggested them was to appoint to this working group and possibly be able to follow the discussion we will have in Europe, because it will be a long discussion that is not going to take 6 months to try to find solution for the exchange of data, of course, between European groups, but also, as I said, if we find a European solution, it's just a stupid thing, because then we have to interact with Brazil, to interact with the EU, to interact outside Europe. So as I see, the situation is more or less the same, especially in heritage science, throughout the globe. Nobody seems to have the ultimate solution for heritage data sets. I think it could be very important to have this discussion, and frankly, there could also be an institutional seat where to have this discussion, which is the Research Data Alliance, which is an international forum counting 7,000 data researchers, but they almost doubled in the last 2 years. This is an organization at global level. It's voluntary, you can subscribe, and then we can create groups there. The problem is that it's voluntary work, so you need resources to devote to the participation of working groups. But the idea which I have is to try to start a working group for discussing these within this organization because of the visibility of the discussion. They have 2 plenaries each year. This year, the last one is in Botswana. It's almost, I think it was in recent days. Then we will see, because just implementing the platform, as I will discuss after lunch, just implementing the platform at European level is going to be a very big problem of relationship, frankly, because you know, in the digital world is made of people using different formats, using different solutions, and we simply cannot afford to be too different if we want to communicate with the data sets, and not just that.
More questions or comments, please?
It's just a comment and maybe some thought a little bit ahead or maybe a little bit crazy, but I just was talking to a colleague yesterday over lunch, and he told me that Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, and those guys, they seem to have a big share, or the more shareholders on the Linux Foundation. And he was talking, well, Windows is going to be completely finished because the way it works. So I don't know, thinking too much ahead, but maybe a crazy idea. If they're working on databases, maybe we could think something like that. I don't know. It's just a crazy idea.
The good point of this, if we develop good ideas, I think we have the critical mass to propose them. So we can involve from the National Library, from the Library of Congress in Washington to the museums in Europe, across universities. So there's such a number of institutions interested of finding solutions to this. Yeah, that ICROM as well. Data is one of the 4 cooperation themes. So also intergovernmental organization. So in practical, we could have a critical mass for generate a proposal. It will be time consuming anyway. The process of converging will be long, that is, to be honest. I have a question for Antonio. Is it admitted? No, I realized when the professor was speaking before about having strategic cooperation agreement in place. Actually, we don't have that, because simply IRIS is not an institution. So I cannot propose, okay, let's write down a strategic cooperation agreement with IRIS. The only thing I suggest to Anticipa is to commit to IRIS, as I remember you committed to Hyperion, but no, you need to change the name. So if you write a different letter committing to IRIS, that would be great for our bureaucracy. But I was thinking, considering the role of Portugal in the past, in actual and in the future, that you could have maybe a strategic agreement with the University of Évora for this period of transition, for this transitional period. That could be managing the cooperation with IRIS through your university. You are one of the biggest nodes in Europe of IRIS, after all, and you are in the right place for handling this. So my question is this feasible in your opinion?
Well, it is feasible, but I think well, we can do it, but we can probably do it through IRIS PT, because even though it's not a legal institution, it's a consortium that is recognized by the state. It's one of the 40 infrastructures from the national roadmap, and it's a consortium between the National Laboratory of Civil Engineering, the National Laboratory of Conservation and Restoration, and the Hercules Lab. And by having those 2 partners and doing these agreements through the IRIS PT platform, then it could be, we could do it, of course.
That is great,
and
but
if you think But of course, we can do it if you think it's strategic. It's an open door for the IRIS. That's the thing. So
I think the IRIS PT
we
is
are
the
out
door,
of
the door
print,
for
so
Europe.
You are not out of the print.
well, we are almost out.
It's
of
not
the print.
explicitly written.
No, it's
that
in the
it's
I know.
30%. It's in the 30%.
Yeah,
You
we
can
are-
compete.
we are in the
Yes,
30%.
you can compete, and
No, I
that's the
understand.
message.
No,
I brought the message.
Yeah, I know,
as
I
well.
know, I know. I'm just kidding.
I have to say the truth, but it's open.
Yeah, no, I know,
You have
I
to
know,
compete
I know.
there.
I know.
Struggle, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, good projects.
But this is just for Minas Gerais University. Then you need to solve the problem for all the universities in
No,
Antecipa. So maybe.
But this is general.
This is general.
This is a general.
No, it's just for refugee.
No, that's general. That's the same rule for every university.
Yes, but
what changes the amount of money every university gets. Our one was well funded with 54 million reals. Other ones have less than us, much less than us, but the rules are general for all of them.
Yeah, so if you sign kind of an agreement with Antecipa, that will be usable for all the universities involved. That's that. By the way, if you sign as IRIS Portugal, I think it will end up signing as Evora because you are the coordinator afterwards.
No, we will all sign. It's just,
Next question.
Yes, just a general comment, I think a bit apart from what we are discussing now. I'm always very concerned about the human resources, and I'm always very concerned when I'm discussing collaboration that I think that we must leave something in the local. And I have some collaborations with other countries in South America. I don't know whether this is a common opinion from my colleague from Argentina and from other colleagues here. But what I see generally is that the locals send their problems, their samples to other countries, and very little remains there. I'm talking about, I think that one of the, if not the most important thing, is how can we efficiently transfer knowledge and how can we efficiently transfer sustainability in this sense to the countries, because it's not just a situation of collaborating. Even in Brazil, for example, Luis showed a very nice map, but I know that we agree that situation in the country is very, very heterogeneous. And our problem in Brazil is not research. I mean, I don't know who mentioned that. Luis mentioned the Sirius facility is a very nice center for synchrotron radiation. We do have one of the best laboratories for Raman spectroscopy in the world in São Paulo. There are other centers for, I mean, with high topic academic level. So our problem in Brazil now is not infrastructure. I would say that I'm very happy that now we are seeing, we are participating in this Antecipa foundation, or not exactly foundation, but start, because I think that we must, first of all, before any other thing, strengthen our institutions. Otherwise, we'll never participate as a partner. We always be, you know, a kind of, we always have tutors for what you have to do, and it is very important for our cultural independency to be able to share the knowledge. We must, mainly because of, I mean, I have very clear political positions. I think that we are now entering in Brazil a dark age or something like that in cultural, for cultural aspects. And we must share what we have. We must share what we achieved so far. So, sorry, this is a small comment on the collaboration stuff. Thank you.
I think there is another question. William, please.
Thank you all for your speeches. I would like to ask to Professor Carlos. I was quick browsing the Erasmus Plus website and also our website, UFMG site. I would like to ask if UFMG is somehow, in some level, institutional level, for this call Antonio told us on the sphere of the Erasmus Plus program, or if
No.
it must be done only in individual basis, because as I saw, they also will receive some institutional proposals. I think.
To be 100% honest with you, no. For the next year, part of my job is try to organize something more professional in this sense. We are, the budget of the university in research, I produce an internal report for the dean. We are spending we got this year, less than 40% of the incoming we used to have in 2015, was our best year, okay? But the surprising is how fast this is going down. So I fully agree that our infrastructure is okay so far because we got lots of investments from FINEP for big equipment and so on. But keep this working, it's cost. Look for whenever resources, other resources you need for research. I don't know if you still have grants. My ones are gone. We have no grants anymore. So we don't know how to keep working, how to buy a reagent, a chemical. Simple like this. There's no money available for such stuff anymore. So hunting for money will become an issue, a very important issue for the university. And I have to organize something like this for the next year. I was chatting with Aurélie, just about something like that, because when I learned from the Horizon 2020 and from some of the opportunities, I have seen this often at the university. People are coming, bringing some ideas how to hunt money, but till today, everything is depend on the individual motivation. And we have to make this institutional somehow, because this is not, applying for Horizon for 2020 is not easy. You go for the documents, you go for everything you have to organize, it's not easy. So we have to make this a little bit more professional. This is our radar for the next year. We'll try to organize something in this sense. So far, there is none.
I can add something to that. So in every university, we have some experience in these Erasmus Plus programs, and in this specific one, this capacity building that is now going to open, well, it's going to end in February. So we are now preparing the new project. So when I go back to Evra, I will have a meeting with the person that normally coordinates these projects. So at the rectorate, we decided that a specific professor at university coordinates these mobility programs on Erasmus capacity building. And what we do, we ask the research centers to select specific topics they want to address. And we make the proposal with selecting 3 or 4 specific topics. And then we go and seek the partners. Normally we have partners from South America, Africa, and Asia. And this, for instance, we are now starting a new KA2 project. And I'm going to prepare now this new project so that in February we have a new call. These projects, it's mainly for mobility, in fact. But what I will do, I will select heritage science as one of the topics for our project at University of Évora, so we can try to fit at least 1 or 2 universities here in Brazil. So, because normally the partners in each country are, well, 1, 2, it can be 3, but it's not normal to have more than 3 partners in one project per country.
It depends on the size of the country.
Yeah, depends. Of course. You're right.
Of course. Okay, I think we can close the session now. Thank you very much, everybody. Do you have some...
for tonight. At 7 p.m., there will be an opening of an exhibition of a mission we had at in Mozambique. This mission was led by our colleague, Professor Yaciara Froner. I've sent the address to our colleagues there. Hopefully they will project it here later on by email. And then this is at 7 p.m. And then at 8:30, there is a restaurant. It's no longer the Chapuri because Chapuri got very far from the place we will be for the opening. And so we have the list outside with the directions and the timing. And later on, we have it projected here. Okay? So we have a nice party tonight. So please, everyone, we'll be back. We start again at 1:30. 1:30. 1:30. Alle 7 c'è l'esposizione, dopo